Hello and welcome to the News 9 Plus show on the world's first news and current affairs OTT platform, News 9 Plus. On the 6th of October 2023, West Asia was a quiet place. In fact, it was so quiet that US National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan wrote on the 2nd of October in a piece in Foreign Affairs that although the Middle East remains beset with perennial challenges, the region is quieter than it has been for decades. Now, this was the calm before the storm, because at 6:29 a.m. on the morning of Saturday, 7th of October, thousands of Hamas terrorists surged out of the Gaza Strip and began a campaign of mercilessly killing, raping, and butchering innocent Israeli civilians. These terrorists were well prepared. They were armed with assault rifles, rocket-propelled grenades with thermobaric rounds designed to set off fires and incinerate civilian homes, which they did. And for those of you who remember the horror inflicted by the Pakistani deep state on the night of November 26, 2008 in Mumbai, there were just 10 terrorists who murdered over 200 Mumbaikars. In Israel, on the morning of 7th October, over 1,000 terrorists killed nearly 1,200 Israeli civilians, and they took 250 of them hostages. Men, women, children, even babies. It's the largest loss of Jewish lives since the Holocaust that ended with the Second World War in 1945. And Israel had this to say about the Holocaust. Never again, they said. Well, never again happened again. And a year later now, Israel is fighting a multi-front war against its enemies, the biggest of which is Iran and its proxies in the region. Tehran's so-called axis of resistance. Tens of thousands of Palestinians have died in the Gaza Strip, and over 100 Israelis continue to remain hostages of Hamas a year later. Their fate is uncertain, and the war now threatens to spill over into a direct confrontation between Israel and Iran. It's a proxy war that began with the Islamic Revolution in Iran in 1979. And today, more than 4 decades later, West Asia is on the brink today. It's at its most dangerous since 1973, when Israel fought its last full-scale conventional war. Israel's initial battlefield defeats were so severe that Prime Minister Golda Meir is believed to have ordered nuclear strike planes and missiles to go on alert. In 2024, it is this war between Iran and Israel which now threatens to engulf the world. On the 9 p.m. show today, we are answering the 5 big questions 1 year later. Question number 1, the horror of October 7th, 2023. Why did Hamas do it? Question number 2, did Iran miscalculate Israeli resolve? Did it overestimate its axis of resistance? Question number 3, what red lines did Iran cross in 2024? Question number 4, will there be a regional war, a wider conflict, and how will it impact India? And finally, question number 5, what is the future of the Abraham Accords that were meant to guarantee lasting peace in the region? Joining me to discuss this today are Major General Sanjay Meston, defense and geopolitical expert, Major Dan Pfefferman, formerly from the IDF, Executive Director Sharaka, who joins us from Israel, and in the studio I have with me Arjun Hardas of the American Jewish Committee. He's the India representative of the AJC, and also from Lebanon is my colleague Sumit Chaudhary, joining us live from Ground Zero. Sumit, over to you first. What is the situation there right now in Beirut with the IDF barreling down on Hezbollah and other forces in the south of Lebanon?
Well, thank you, Sandeep. But right now the situation is very tense, although we know that it's almost 1 year after the 7th of October. But from last one day, we have noticed that now IDF is not only targeting the Dahya, but also the Mount Lebanon areas, which is the mountain areas of the Lebanon surrounded by the Beirut. So that is the new strategy, new attack which has been happened from last 24 hours. We have also, because I mean, yesterday I was in Tyre, so that particular time I traveled to the few parts of South Lebanon. We have noticed now the IDF forces have, I think, captured almost around 3 kilometers of area. Ground forces have moved further, and they have captured around 3 kilometers of area. They have been very slowly stepping in the South Lebanon. And on the other side, there is a strategy where IDF have been continuously targeting the Dahya and the most of the locations which were known as the main epicenters of Hezbollah. So their strategy is very clear. They wanted to first weak the Hezbollah in their own land, in their own epicenters. Then only the ground forces will move further in the South Lebanon. Sandeep.
Right. Thanks very much, Sumit, for that update. We'll keep coming back to you for updates from the battle zone, ground zero in Lebanon. And my request to you, as always, in every show of News 9 Plus has been, stay safe, Sumit. Look out, and no stories worth your life. Please take care of yourself and keep getting us those inputs without putting your life in danger. But thank you very much, Sumit, for joining us. Sumit Chaudhary there for News 9 Plus, live from the battleground, from ground zero as Israel tackles Hezbollah. But I want to start by asking Major Pfefferman this. Major Pfefferman, we've been talking to you over the last couple of months. It's the first anniversary of the horrific October 7th massacre. Are we any wiser today than we were a year ago about why Hamas did what it did? I've traveled to Israel a few days back, and I thought I was prepared for what I saw, but I wasn't. The sheer horror of the barbaric attack on innocent men, women, children, babies even. Do we know why Hamas did something that was certain to bring an Israeli retaliation that would finish them off as an entity?
A year later, unfortunately, I think we do know why they did it. On the geopolitical level, it seemed that they wanted to torpedo or certainly postpone or delay the expected signing of a normalization agreement between Israel and Saudi Arabia, possibly even to undo the Abraham Accords that were signed with Israel and the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain and Morocco, and the kind of looming warming of ties that was happening across the region. But on the very basic level, we Israelis really did not understand that their intention has always been to inflict as much damage and harm in the most barbarous ways possible upon the Israeli population. They believe, and here it is, the tragedy really of this conflict is that they fundamentally do not understand who we are, the Israelis, the Jews, our connection to this land. And so they have a fundamental belief that if they continue to strike, continue to wreak havoc, continue to destroy and murder and rape and kidnap and exact a price, they believe one day we as the colonialists that they claim we are, will get up and go back to wherever it is they think we came from. And then that is one of the fundamental tragedies of this conflict, that they don't understand that we are home, that we are indigenous to this land. However, their playbook has and remained the same. They will conduct a barbarous strike. And your question actually misunderstands what they wanted to achieve. They wanted to achieve a very destructive war. However, what they had assumed was that they conduct some kind of barbarous strike. We will exact the retaliation that we need to extract. They will hide behind their civilians as human shields, and the international community will rush once again to stop Israel. And as happened in the past 6 conflicts between Israel and terrorist actors in the Gaza Strip, including Hamas and Islamic Jihad, we will be wary of entering Gaza because of the trap that they have set with the 500 kilometers of tunnels. And that basically the entire strip of land is one booby-trapped urban warfare setting, waiting for us to come in, akin to an Israeli Vietnam or an Afghanistan, if you will. And so they wanted to set off this war. They purposefully This is their playbook. Set off a war, hide behind their hostages, their civilians as human shields, take hostages of ours as additional human shields, and then use international pressure and very sophisticated propaganda campaigns to limit our retaliatory attack and get us to accept some kind of ceasefire now.
Arjun, what Major Pfefferman just said, that it was Hamas acting as a suicide bomber. It blew itself up, wanting to sabotage the peace process in the Middle East. How effective has that strategy of theirs been? It's certainly not stopped the IDF from coming after them in Gaza, despite the human shields, despite them taking Israeli hostages. The IDF has really gone after Hamas. And today it's a fairly diminished outfit.
That's correct.
Later.
That's correct, Sandeep. You remember I was here in your studio with you exactly a
Exactly
year ago.
a year. This
7th
is what we
October. The
discussed.
only thing I did not have with me
Yes.
was this
I was
yellow.
going to ask you about that. Tell us the significance of the yellow bar.
This is in memory of, this is for the bring the hostages home.
Right.
This has never been worn before because this sort of a thing has never happened. There have been prisoners of war. There have been
Yes.
soldiers taken by Egypt, Jordan, Syria, etc. But they have been soldiers and Israel and the Arab soldiers taken prisoner. But this is a new phenomena
Right.
of going in, capturing civilians, as you said,
In
children,
hundreds.
in the hundreds,
Yes.
and taking them back. Now, in answer to your question and what Dan Pfefferman has also said, now the thing is what a lot of people don't understand is that in Israel, the basic fundamental is of value of life.
Yes.
About 14 years ago, 13 years ago, there was one soldier kidnapped.
Yes.
One, corporal rank.
Right.
And to release him in Hamas prisoners, which included
Yahya
Sinwar,
Sinwar, yes.
okay,
Gilad
were released.
Shalit,
Almost
the-
1,000 soldiers,
Right.
the prisoners, Hamas prisoners, were released for one soldier.
Yes.
So they understand the Israeli weakness for human life.
Yes.
So now the thing is, what have they done? In answer to your question, why do this now? They don't care
Yes.
about human life, whether Jewish,
Right.
Muslim, Arab, anything. Are you
Right.
aware, for example, which a lot of people are not, that among the hostages are not only Jews, but there are Buddhists, Muslims,
Yes.
Hindus,
Right.
from different nationalities. I mean, taking Muslim hostages, what sort of a war against the Jews is this?
Exactly. And that's
Now the question, sorry, let me just complete
Yes.
what I had said, what I started off on. The concept is to inflict as much damage psychologically on the
Yes.
Jews. They showed all this, as you saw in our
Yes.
delegation, of how they wanted to broadcast and they wanted to scare, exactly what Dan said about they
Yes.
wanted to terrify the Israelis.
Right.
And the problem is they have been very clear right from the beginning.
Yes.
There have been no negotiation, there have been no discussions. They just want to defeat. Let me put it this way, in a very blunt manner. Had on 7th October, through some miracle of theirs,
Yes.
had access to all 10 million, I'm not saying 7 million Jews, I'm saying to all the 10 million Israelis, which included Druze,
Yes.
Muslims, Jews of Israel, on that day, somehow if they managed to access to that day, they would have massacred all 10 million
Absolutely.
Israelis.
Given the ferocity of the attacks,
They
and I've
want
seen the
to
kind of
kill.
weapons they want
They
to use.
want their civilians to die,
Yes.
so that they have a new breed. Okay, what you said, that they're losing their cadres, etc.
Right.
Hamas is almost entirely finished. Has the ideology finished? They will use the dead civilians,
Yes.
their own civilians,
Right.
Hamas or Arab Muslim civilians, as propaganda to see
Right.
how the Jews have been merciless, and they
Right.
will use this to build up their new cadre.
A new generation,
of
of Hamas, thing, God forbid. But,
Yeah.
General Sanjay Meston is on the show with us. He served in West Asia for several years. General Meston, we've seen the kind of red lines that have been crossed. We haven't seen this in previous years. The kind of barbarity that's been inflicted on civilians, the kind of missile exchanges that we've seen in hundreds, ballistic missiles being fired in the hundreds. And Saddam Hussein fired 40 of them
Yes.
at Israel in 1991, I recall. And here you're the state of Iran firing 180 ballistic missiles at Israel. When the conflict began, General Meston, we discussed all of this Iranian proxies, the fact that Iran has what it calls an axis of resistance. It's Hamas, Hezbollah, Houthis, the three H's, and of course the Kataib Hezbollah in Iraq, which it's set up to basically confound Israel, attack it from all directions. But a year later, when all of these proxies are literally in tatters, they've extracted a price, but it doesn't seem to have stopped Israel from doing what it set out to do. Hezbollah is literally decimated. The leadership is in tatters. It's barely this much wanted rocket arsenal of it's barely managing to fire any of those. Hamas is literally finished. The Houthis are, on an island of their own. Did Iran miscalculate Israel's resolve to strike back? Did it overestimate the role of its proxies, the fact that it could use these proxies and keep Israel at bay, exactly like what Hamas tried to do with the civilian hostages? General Meston.
Yeah, Sandeep, absolutely correct. I think the Iranians underestimated the Israeli response, and so is all their proxies, whether it is Houthis, whether it is Hezbollah, and whether it is Hamas. Starting from Hamas, I think I totally agree with the guest from Israel. The Hamas had totally underestimated the response because the kind of tunnel network they had,
Yes.
and taking large number of hostages, and of course killed so many of them. So they thought the response would be very difficult for the Israelis because firstly, operating in built-up areas, extremely difficult warfare, and then more upon that, you have the civilians who are acting as a human shield, and more than that, the
Yes.
operation totally inside tunnels. So they had underestimated. Same thing in Hezbollah. On 8th October, Hezbollah also, started firing rockets and missiles just to show
Right.
their solidarity with the Hamas. And again, I think it was total underestimation by the Hezbollah and Iranians. They thought 2006 was a good lesson, and
Yes.
Israel will not venture into southern Lebanon. Now they have gone very systematic. I think this is the first time in the history of warfare. The Pager attacks has been a lesson learned for I think all the armies of the world.
Yes. Major Pfefferman, did Iran overestimate the importance of its proxy actors? Did it think that it could actually fight a war with these proxy actors and Israel would be deterred? How has that strategy played out for Iran? The proxy actor strategy of theirs?
Well, in the short term, it seems that the strategy is not playing out well, but I don't want to underestimate Iran, because what Iran has been doing is a long game. And the long game, in their words, is to build a ring of fire, a ring of pressure around Israel.
Right.
And so they have developed Hamas. They're working on constantly developing Palestinian militant groups, also in the West Bank, of course, Hezbollah in Syria. They have in Iraq. The Houthis, who most Israelis had not heard of prior to this war, have been
Yes.
firing, even this morning, fired a drone at Tel Aviv, where I'm sitting right now. And so their game is a long game of constantly building up the pressure on Israel and building up the pressure in ways that are incremental, and then, of course, using their very sophisticated, and here I have to tip my hat off to the Iranians and their access. Their propaganda machine is incredibly effective at convincing the international community, convincing the West that it is Iran and the proxies who are somehow the victims of Israeli aggression, even though, on October 7th and 8th, before Israel had even finished counting the bodies in Israeli farming communities, Hezbollah and then the Houthis were already firing at missiles at Israel. Tactically speaking, and for this round, I think Iran did overestimate its own deterrent capability, and I think they did not estimate and appreciate apparently how well Israeli intelligence had infiltrated the entire Hezbollah mechanism, and you saw what happened in the course of about 2 weeks. That the entire, not virtually, the entire Hezbollah command structure was taken out. That tens of thousands of operatives were sidelined in the hospital.
Yes.
Half of their medium range and long range missile array and launchers were taken out of action, and of course the cross-border tunnels were taken out. And I think they did overestimate Israeli resolve, the success and the penetration of Israeli intelligence and Israeli capabilities, and that Israel does not have the luxury of sitting by while Iran tightens this noose, so to speak, around Israel's neck.
Yes, absolutely. And in fact, Major Pfefferman, while we were in Tel Aviv, I remember talking to this Israeli official who told us that Hezbollah was always our main threat, and we've prepared for this for 18 years, and we've had the time and the resources and the planning to do what we did now. It's not like we did this overnight. And Hezbollah possibly miscalculated, Iran miscalculated as well, and the kind of havoc that Hezbollah has been facing now with its command and control in complete tatters and its leaders, unaccounted for. It clearly shows the kind of planning that Israel has brought to bear on Hezbollah. But Arjun, Iran has crossed a number of red lines this year, beginning with the ballistic and drone missile attack in April, and you had this massive attack on the 27th of September, where another 180 ballistic missiles were fired at Israel, kind of breaking this covert war that they've had with Israel over 4 decades now. Does this actually lead to Israel also retaliating in kind? We are at a very tense moment now. We don't know how Israel is going to react. It's going to be disproportionate to what Iran did, because that escalation ladder, both sides are slowly climbing up that escalation ladder. What are the calculations that Iran had when they launched those 180 ballistic missiles at Tel Aviv?
Look, to say that this is a red line this year, I mean, yes, but they have been doing this for the last 40 years, 45 years.
Right, but never launching missiles at each other.
They've come to this point when their other proxies, starting off with the Hamas, the smaller, so to say, attacks have failed. Hezbollah attacks have failed. Now they're going in for this. And they had this, obviously, and the Iranians are not stupid. Everybody knows that. They are very smart people, especially the clerics, is trying to overwhelm. Now, there are some speakers from the Al-Quds, etc., how credible, I don't know, who have said that we haven't even fired 1/100th of our stockpile. The idea is to overwhelm Israeli defenses. Eventually, they know
missile
what
defenses,
Israeli defenses they've got, missile defenses. Now, the one thing to remember, right, for the last 45 years, since the revolution, the Iranians look at Israel as the little Satan, as they refer to them. The big Satan is the United States. So, and the only so-called solid, self-standing country that is there in the Middle East, who's a friend of the United States but can sustain itself on its own, is Israel. So once Israel is taken out of the equation, if it ever happens, then Iran's objective is not Israel. Iran's objective is the larger Middle East, the Iranian, the Shia crescent has been discussed in Israel, and the United States to be taken out of this region completely.
Right. As we heard in Israel, it was about reimagining the Persian Empire. Of a sense, a Shia Persian Empire, which Iran wants to, chair. But, General Meston, as we're talking, there is this what military officials say the escalation ladder, which is gradually being crossed. Every country, whether it's Israel or Iran, is walking up that ladder. Iran has done the unthinkable, launching 2 waves of ballistic missiles and cruise missiles. We are waiting
Sandeep,
for...
if I may correct you, this is the third one, because in April, they also launched.
But
in nothing got through at that point. So this is in April on one night, then the second, and then the next day.
And they've targeted civilian areas.
As well.
Targeted airfields, unprecedented attacks of September 27th. But General Meston, the question then is, will there be a wider regional war? Because if Iran retaliates to what we imagine is going to be a massive Israeli retaliation, it's just one more step up the escalation ladder, and we could possibly be looking at a all-out Israel-Iran war, which is going to have impact on India as well. What's your thoughts on this, General Meston?
Yeah, you recollect Prime Minister Netanyahu in the UN address had shown one map, the blessing and the... So let me be very clear. The curse is involved in this war, and the final curse is, of course, the Iran. They will get involved, and Israel is going to retaliate very, very heavily. I think they've got a lot of options. We will not discuss that. Now, what is the interest of Iran? Iran would like this to be a regional conflict, because it wants to involve the countries of the blessing so that it becomes a Muslim versus, the West or the Christianity or the Jews. They're trying to propagate. Whereas the United States and Israel do not want to escalate this beyond a regional war. It needs to be confined between Iran, Israel, and of course United States and the other axis of resistance. So I per se feel that probably the other nations would not like to get involved. Even Russia is having its own problems. China would take this advantage of today start focusing on Taiwan in Indo-Pacific. So therefore, the others may not get involved, and what will be the implication? If I were a Israeli, I would be launching on the refineries. Why? Because targeting the refineries will hit the people of Iran. So they are not the people directly; it will hit the people of Iran, And therefore, the people of Iran will start realizing, when there is the food prices will go up, when there is no oil, etc.
Right.
They will they will target their own people, and that is the leadership. And they will realize where is this war leading on to. So that's a
Absolutely.
very high target, and therefore, yes, when the oil refineries are targeted, the oil prices will escalate.
Right,
As in case-
absolutely, yes. Which is why the rest of the world, including the United States, is very concerned about the fact that an attack on Iran's energy infrastructure could go out of hand. It could impact global oil prices and lead to escalation of the kind that possibly no country in the world wants. But Major Pfefferman, I want to ask you this. We began by talking about the Abraham Accords, the picture of a Middle East that's peace and prosperity, where everyone could participate and you could have corridors, energy corridors, information technology corridors going through the Middle East. What is the future of the Abraham Accords a year after October 7th? An attack that was specifically designed, like you mentioned, to sabotage these Abraham Accords. Is there life left in these accords? What is a timeline that you could give us for when all the parties involved, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, US, Israel, could sit on the table once again and take this peace process forward? Major Pfefferman.
Sure. We see 1 year later that the relationships with the UAE, with Bahrain, have not been harmed. They continue. Of course, the profile of them has been lessened due to sensitivity on the side of the new Arab states that have these relations with Israel. Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman, the Crown Prince, made it quite clear very early into the war that the potential of relations with Israel is not off the table. And something that is important to point out here, and that is contrary to a lot of the criticism that is coming, and I think quite hypocritically or naively, I'm not quite sure, from Europe and even from many voices in the United States, is that it is because of the Israeli military victory and superiority, the dominance over the Iranian-led axis of resistance, as they call it, that these countries are willing, and they see the importance of maintaining and expanding these relations with Israel. A lot of what stands behind the Abraham Accords is, as you said, the unlocking the potential of the region as far as tourism, communications, trade, telecom, etc. But a lot of it is also a military and defense and intelligence pact against this Iranian access, recognizing that the allies in the West have been, I'm sorry to say, fickle in recent years, and it is Israel that is the one who will eventually defend them against aggression from Iran and its proxies. And so they needed to see that Israel not only could, but was willing to fight, to win, to sacrifice, and to show this superiority. What I would like to see here in the coming months is how do these Arab states affect the right pressure, certainly on Iran and its proxies, and those Arab states that are teetering in these middle gray zones, refusing to take sides. How do they affect more pressure on Iran and its axis to back down? How do they perhaps offer them diplomatic trees with which they can climb out of, so that they can have some sort of diplomatic solution to save face, and that we can move on? What is clear is that the future of the region is the Abraham Accords. It is moving in that direction of connectivity and peace. And we need to work effectively as a region and with the backing of countries like India and the international community to sideline and to limit as much as possible these extremists led by Iran.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you very much, Major Pfefferman, for your thoughts on that. October 7th, a year later, Israel is fighting a war against Iran and its proxies. That war is against those who don't want peace in the Middle East. And certainly India is on the side of peace. And at the end of this war, at the light at the end of this tunnel are the Abraham Accords that could guarantee lasting peace in the region. But thank you very much, Major Pfefferman, for joining us from Israel. General Sanjay Meston and my friend Arjun Hardas here in the studio with me. 1 year later, Israel's war against Iran and its proxies takes a new turn. Thank you for joining us.